Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Lindsay Topp. I'm the Director of Journal Publications for the American College of Gastroenterology. And today I'll be speaking about editorial board, editor-in-chief, but mainly full editorial board transitions, especially from the perspective of a small office, and just share a little bit about how we handled our most recent one. Like I said, I direct the journals for the American College of Gastroenterology, which is a physician membership organization. We publish 3 scientific journals. Our main one is the American Journal of Gastroenterology, which has about 35 editors. We have 2 other smaller journals that are a little bit newer that have smaller editorial boards, but we underwent editorial board transition, a full board transition for AJG in late 2015, so that's what this will be about. A little bit about my office. Our office is just me and an editorial assistant. So we do everything from starting the 3rd journal in 2013 and self-publishing that to, all peer review, editor, author, publisher relations, literally everything from A to Z, we do it. So when you introduce something like a big board transition into something like that, it can be quite hectic. So why are editorial board transitions part of this session? When I was going in about the year leading up to our full transition, I sort of had no idea what to expect. I'd never done anything like this before. And what I found is that it is probably the most stressful and longest situation you will be in if you are a managing editor or otherwise running an editorial office. Maybe changing publishers would be more stressful, I'm not sure, but in this scenario, you're most likely on your own, and it's pretty rough. So from the time that we put out the call for applications for editors-in-chief to the time that we were at full capacity, which I define as everybody sort of knows what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not answering 1,000 questions, that was about 18 months. From the time that we had the editors-in-chief in place to full capacity was about a year, and from the time that I had the full editorial board in place to full capacity was about 6 months. So this can go on for a really long time. Added to this is the fact that depending on your editorial board cycles, you might do this every 3, 10, 15 years. I will do it every 6. So the last time this happened for our journal, I wasn't even on staff, and the person who was in my position was no longer there. If it's 10 years ago, you maybe forgot, or publishing just changes so quickly that what we do 10 years ago probably doesn't apply anymore. So I think when you're starting, it's important to take a very broad perspective that kind of includes you as part of the transition process, because you will manage your own transition as well as theirs. I frequently said in that year that I felt like I got a job that I didn't ask for overnight. You end up working with new people. We have 2 editors-in-chief for that journal, so you work with 2 new personalities at a very chaotic time. And surprisingly, you might find that your actual role changes along with theirs. So, and the dynamic of your role against everyone else on the board. So in my case, I went from more of a sort of an assistant where they'd say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, Lindsay, can you make that happen? And I'd go, sure. To the new team saying, what do we do, Lindsay? And me having to explain that. So at first I felt very sort of almost out of place, like I was overstepping boundaries, like I was sort of speaking out of turn or being pushy, but that was what they required of me, and that was a change that I hadn't expected. So I would just say own what is required of you as soon as possible. So so the details of sort of how you approach the process. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is there will be a period of time during this process where you are the only one who knows what's going on. The old editorial board is sort of drifting away, and the new ones don't really know what they're doing, and it's just kind of you. So in order to help that process, the best thing you can do is get yourself organized. I had multiple running lists of sort of big picture changes or ideas. I had running lists of tiny details to take care of. If you have invited columns, if you have anything that's solicited that's outstanding, get the status of all of it and make sure you know exactly where everything is at every moment. Make a timeline for yourself, at least at the beginning, so count backwards from your debut date. For us, it was January 1st, 2016. We sort of counted back from there as to what needed to happen at each time, and I'll kind of go into that in a minute. And if you have a choice, do this at a quiet time, so don't make it correspond with your annual meeting, which is what we had to do, just because of coincidence, and that made it even more difficult. So, whatever your organization does every year, that's sort of the big thing. Try to move this so it's not right on top of it. And, make sure you get support. So talk to your publisher, see if they can offer anything to help you, guidance. Talk to your organization if you work for a membership organization like I do. Tell them what's going on, ask them for help. Make sure that you have support from them if you're in situations where you're trying to sort of hold ground either against the new editorial board or advocate for new ideas. Just don't be afraid to ask for help, because it can be, especially if you're in a small office and it's a big project and there's a lot of people, it can feel very isolating and overwhelming. Okay, so actually starting the process, it's a little hard for me to give real specifics on step-by-step what to do, because everybody's office is so different, everybody's structure is so different, but these are kind of, I think, general things that are somewhat applicable to everyone. If you have the option, if you can advocate for this, get a seat on the selection interview panel for the editor-in-chief as the applications are being considered. The people who are applying are likely reviewers or associate editors or lead prominent authors. You know them most likely, and you know them in the context of publishing better than probably your organization board or anyone else does. So you can offer a great perspective, and your confidence with the choice is really important for both the journal and for you. Once the editor-in-chief is selected, start getting them on the phone. I started talking to mine every 2 weeks, and we would just talk about ideas. I'd answer their questions. You'll fill the time for sure, but what it really does is it builds a rapport with you, and it gets them used to making time for you. I think some people sign up for this and they don't realize how much time it actually takes, and so this helps them reinforce that, yeah, this is something I'm going to need to set aside time for. And it also, obviously, you get to collect their ideas, 8 months before they actually start, so that you have time to follow up and make things happen. One thing we thought about is how much influence does the outgoing team have, and I think it's really up to you and your society. Our outgoing editorial board was relatively successful, and I think somewhat intimidating to the new group, so we kind of just made a group decision that, other than a few conversations, that they would just kind of be separate. We wanted the new people to define that path and plan on their own without having to, step around. But if you go down that path again, whoever you as the managing editor or whoever is leading the journal on a day-to-day basis sort of ends up as the primary source of information. So it can add a little bit more stress onto you. So once the editors-in-chief are in place, they're going to start picking their AE boards. This happened about 4 or 5 months before the AEs the transition actually happened. So again, especially here, get a hold of those lists before the people are invited to join. These people are really most likely top reviewers, top authors, people you've worked with them, if they're prompt or if they're nice or if they're thorough or if they're not those things, and developing a rapport so that you can say, no, I really think this would be a bad idea, or recommending people that you think would be great which also happened, that can really help everyone in the long run. So really your job is to collect their ideas, figure out whether or not it's possible, come back to them and tell them what to do, and then just keep doing that over and over again until, I'm still doing that. But, that's sort of your main job in the transition. And you can really help them because they're going to come in with 1,000 ideas and they want to do them all at once, and they're all great, and you can help them prioritize and sort of manage that not all this is going to happen at once, and these are the most important, and these are the most likely, and that they're not going to be able to do everything at once. And on the smaller side, don't forget all the thousands of little things that this transition touches. You will have to update everything. You have to collect information. You have to update your systems. You have to update your websites and your mastheads and your marketing stuff, and it will just spider out into literally everything you touch. So keep a running list of all the little stuff that you have to do so that you can make sure that it's done before the actual transition hits. So once you're kind of getting the people in place, you're kind of getting the plan in place, I think it's a transition like this is a really good time to start thinking about what you can do better as a journal. You're more likely to do this kind of thing during a major transition than you are in the middle of a term when everybody's already set in their ways. And I think one of the thing that I tried to keep in mind in literally every conversation that I had with them is to not respond to a new idea with, no, that's not how we do things, or no, that the old team never did it that way, or always say, okay, I'll look into it. It doesn't mean the idea can be off the wall, you don't have to do it, but don't shut it down right at the beginning, because just because the old team did it one way doesn't mean it's the right way. And so, take this time. If there are columns in your journal that are awful, that don't need to be there, cut them. If you've seen something you've always thought it should be updated, suggest it. They might take it. And really look at your procedures and your workflows and everything, and see if there is an opportunity here as you're training a new team to improve that and streamline that. And one note on changing your actual journal, if it does involve the publisher, changing layouts, templates, design, notify them as far in advance as you possibly can, because that can take months, even if you wouldn't think it would, but it can take a really long time. So, let's see. Okay, so once your AE board is in place, maybe a month before they're going to take over, these are kind of the things that I found useful. Keep that timeline handy. And what I did was I sort of made a targeted timeline that goes to the old board so that they know how they're going to roll off, and a targeted timeline that goes to the new board so they know how they're going to roll on. The hard handoff date was October 1st, but the last couple weeks of September we did a soft roll where we kind of wound one team down and launched one team up so that they wouldn't have to handle the volume while they were learning. That really worked pretty well. One thing that I did that was really helpful to me, even if it wasn't helpful to anyone else, was I made an editorial handbook. I made a 10-page document and made it into a PDF, and it has screen grabs of our manuscript system with, step 1, step 2, step 3, how do you make a decision, what button do I push? You'll answer that question 1,000 times. What button do I push? This is the button that you push with an arrow. But it also has, policies, contact information, what do I do with a letter to the editor? It has that kind of stuff. But what it really did was it forced me to walk through my system and my processes, and I sort of saw it from a new person's eyes, and all the weaknesses in the system became very apparent. And so I was able to kind of fix things before it even went to a new group of people. Plus, you'll memorize the system in a way that maybe just in using it every day, it kind of puts it in that framework in your mind, and you'll be ready when you get the 1,000 questions. And it's also handy when you're just swamped and somebody has a question, you can just hand them the handbook and say, if it's not on, look on page 9, but if it's not there, come back to me. And the last point is probably the most surprising and frustrating, which is that you will answer the same question 150,000 times. I say 40, but that's actually way less. And that it's very, very important that you not lose your patience on the phone. Don't let your frustration come through an email. Hang up the phone before you bang on your desk. Smile, and because it's always better that they ask you now instead of guessing, and then you have to go back and fix it. So, but you will doubt your ability that you're speaking the same language that they are, and you are. But in my case, my editorial board are they're academic doctors, and they're doing a million things, and they're distracted, and a lot of them have admin support, and they're not used to using systems, and it's just for some of them, it doesn't come that easy. So that's why. A few months in, ask for feedback. You'll be surprised what you get from new people. We used to send our call agendas as an attachment on email, and then they wouldn't get updated by the time call came. And now somebody said, well, why don't we just do a Google Doc? And I was like, well, why don't we just do a Google Doc? And so that's really changed. That's really made that more efficient. You're going to need to distribute a lot of information to a large group of people over and over again, but really try to keep your emails to them limited. My people get 1 million emails a day, and you want to make sure that a year later, they still, when you send them an email, they look at it. It just doesn't become noise. So what I would do is, every couple weeks and then maybe every month, I would send kind of a tips and tricks email, gather the the frequently asked questions that you've gotten from the board, and send it all out so that it helps answer their questions without just becoming a barrage. And as you get further down the line, don't underestimate the value of in-person group meetings, even though they probably can go wrong. We meet twice a year at various conferences, and it helps build a rapport with it, especially with a new team. It gives you a chance to walk through the manuscript system, those types of things in person, and answer questions. And you'll be surprised, especially maybe 6 months after they've started, what ideas you'll get. They can really sort of energize your group. So keep it light, don't barrage them with slides, and just let them do most of the talking, and it can be really beneficial for your journal. So this is the last slide. I just wanted to touch on, without getting too touchy-feely, I just wanted to touch on some of the sort of silver linings of this process. It's really normal, especially if if you're close to an editorial board, you like them, if things seem easy. It's really normal to just want to resist this because it can be really stressful. But if I can give you one piece of advice, it would be to just be open to change. Approach it with an open mind. And some things that came out of it that I didn't really expect is that my role changed. I'm more assertive in my role. I sort of own my experience and my skill set and my value to the organization better. They're professional doctors, but I'm a publisher, and I know what I'm doing, and so I bring something to the table. And so as a result, my job is less stressful, even though this was a stressful process to get here. Like I said, our processes have drastically improved. We removed a lot of inefficiencies and outdated stuff. I'm more essential to my organization. I sort of handled this project without them needing to worry about much, and so it's a really excellent opportunity for you to show your strength if you don't work for a publisher, if you work for an association. And I think best of all, I have a better relationship with the new team than I did with the old. There's something about kind of developing policies together, learning together, sort of all growing, that it makes, it's just warmer. The discussions are better. They do a really nice job. We're about a year and a half, I guess, going on 2 years out from the transition point, and there are days where I'm amazed at how smoothly things go. Like, it's smoother than it ever went before, even though we're busier. So I would just say, you know, this can be a really tough process, but if you keep an open mind, some really great things can come out of it, you know, even beyond your journal. So that's all. Thank you.
So thank you, Lindsay. Can I get a show of hands of the number of people in the room who have undergone an editorial transition like this? Okay, so I told you this is an interactive session, and this is the part of the presentation when we need to have a Mac user put their presentation on. So can we have someone come up and tell us a little 2-3 minute synopsis of their transition as an additional case study during this portion? One of you that raised your hands? It's a good, juicy 2-minute summary. Okay, we got one. No? No. I'm pointing. Anyone else?
They're doing this. Come on, you raise your hands.
Or other questions?
Okay, good.
Great. Let's get you set up.